this year, I suspect we're going to get a Game Boy Classic. But guess what, Will? I already made a video on what I would like to see in the Game Boy Classic. So we're going to talk about the N64 Classic, or Mini.
The elusive N64 Classic, or the N64 Mini that everybody wants Nintendo to come out with. And who knows if they're going to.
It's going to be hard.
Yeah.
Because
N64 emulation, for one thing, is a lot more difficult than NES and SNES.
Yes, and there's also a lot of licensing issues.
Yes, that's a big one.
For some reason, I mean, there's still licensing issues with SNES and NES games, but
yeah,
things get a lot murkier for some reason in the N64 era.
Well, they get murkier because there actually were some of the, and by some, I mean really two, GoldenEye and like WWE No Mercy are like two of the best loved N64 games, and those are gonna be licensing nightmares alone. Also, and I'm trying to look this up right now, like half of the best games on the N64 were made by Rare, and that's owned by Microsoft right now.
I feel like that won't be a problem. I feel like Microsoft would be cool.
Yeah, like I keep saying with GoldenEye and like the elusive GoldenEye remake, like Rare and Nintendo and Microsoft are like buddies now. So like a partnership between them, like getting Rare games on the N64 Classic, seems more likely. But in 2015, Microsoft put out Rare Replay, and that game had, what did it have? Killer Instincts Gold, Blast Core, Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie, Jet Force Gemini, Perfect Dark, Conker's Bad Fur Day. It had 7 Nintendo 64 games on it. So,
yeah, that's why I'm saying, like, I feel like we have a chance with games like Banjo-Kazooie. Because Microsoft seems to be playing fair with Nintendo, and they're playing nice with a lot of their IP.
Yeah.
So even though they'll have to license it, I feel like there's a pretty good chance something like that could make it.
Yeah.
So something like GoldenEye is going to be a little bit more of a problem.
Yeah.
Which is going to be probably the #1 game that most people want.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the biggest problem, because whenever people think of the Nintendo 64, one of the first games they think about is GoldenEye. And a lot of the reasons why the NES and the SNES Classic were so popular is because they knew to include the games that the hardcore and the casuals both gravitate towards. Not having GoldenEye on there, like, that's going to be the first game half the audience is going to want, and if it's not there, that's 50% of your revenue stream cut in half.
I feel like those people are still going to buy the thing. They're just going to be disappointed that it's not that GoldenEye is not there. But we would get Perfect Dark, right?
We could get Perfect Dark.
It would be rare, but it would be a rare game.
Yeah.
But Rare's being cool, so I feel like Perfect Dark is a perfect substitute.
It is
for GoldenEye.
No, it is.
It doesn't have the same like name recognition, but it's
and the multiplayer
just as good.
The multiplayer is a little bit more complex than GoldenEye, but
how more?
It just has so many more features, so many more things that you can do.
Okay, so another thing you mentioned the emulation would be really difficult.
Yeah,
because N64 emulation is difficult. N64 games run at sub 30 frames per second. A lot of them.
Yeah,
they run like at super low frame rates.
Yeah, and
they run way better in emulators sometimes. But then you get like these weird like textures. And I know that they make texture packs, but it's not really that easy to add texture packs to an emulator.
The N64 was one of those systems that ran in 240p primarily. But then some games have 480i modes, like menus could run in 480i. If you use the N64 expansion pack, like games would run in 480i completely. And a lot of like the polygons and stuff might up-res fine, but a lot of those games use like PNG images. Like Mario 64, your life icon is a PNG, and that will not scale properly.
I remember playing Mario Party in an emulator with MDB, and
yeah,
the polygons looked like super crisp, but there was a lot of the UI that was pictures or PNGs that just looked absolutely terrible. They were super blurry. How did the PlayStation Classic handle like what did it just output 480 and that's what you get no matter what?
No, because it upscaled it. I think it upscaled it because the NES and the SNES updated to 720p.
Mm-hmm.
And the PlayStation Classic, I'm pretty sure, did something similar. But the difference is that handled this emulation pretty poorly.
Well, so I remember you playing oh no, wait, no, that was on an actual PS1, wasn't it? Playing Final Fantasy?
Yeah, that was a PS2.
You played, it was a PS2 that we put through the OSSC.
Yes.
But no, I've seen footage from the PlayStation Classic and you get crisp pixels.
Yeah.
Like it upreses the pixels.
Yeah, I'm trying to see what it upreses.
Because that's what it would need to do. It's not as straightforward as something like an NES or an SNES where you just want to make those pixels bigger.
Yeah.
It's always going to be 240 and then you just magnify the pixels and make those nice and crisp. In the case of N64 emulation or any 3D emulation, you can get really sharp polygons.
Mm-hmm.
But you probably don't want that because of the all of the images and the textures that are used, because those would be blurry. So you would want to take the pixels and blow those up, make those bigger.
Yeah. The PlayStation Classic outputs at 720. So just like the NES and SNES.
Yeah, but what does it initially read?
The games are like 240p.
Right. Well, is it like the N64 where some of them are like more?
Yeah.
So how does it handle that? Besides poorly.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing that Nintendo's going to have to figure out.
Whatever software emulator they're using has to know to read everything properly.
Right.
It has to know that if it's outputting a 240p signal, upscale it to 480i, and if it's running a 480i signal, don't do anything.
Well, if it's 240p, you got to upscale it to 7. It's always got to upscale to at least 720.
Right.
Yeah. So they would have to change the amount that it upscales.
Yeah.
A lot of emulators, like I know the Super Nintendo does a really good, like the SNES Classic does a really good job of like slow down when you're playing Mega Man. Even the NES when you're playing Mega Man, you'll see like the slowdown, and that was a hardware limitation, but it's like built into emulators.
Mm-hmm.
Which is really cool to see because it's part of the game.
Yeah.
They would need to also do that in N64 games because the frame, unless you just want to make the frame rate run great all of the time.
Yeah, because here's the thing.
How do you purposely make the frame rate trash?
Because like a lot of those games, like it was a hindrance. Like Perfect Dark, like it would slow to a crawl if there were too many people on screen.
Right.
So, and like that, I mean, at first it looks cool because it looks like bullet time, but then you're just like moving at like 1 frame a second.
That's another thing. This would be the first classic console with 4 players.
Yeah.
Or with the potential of 4 players.
Well,
like out of the box.
It would have to ship with 4 controllers. Like it would have to. Well, because the NES didn't ship with 2 controllers. It only shipped with 1, but the SNES did.
Yeah, I think they just want to squeeze more money out.
Well, I feel like that was a better option because there are a lot more 2-player games on the SNES, especially games like Street Fighter.
Here's what I think happened. They knew that it made way more money than they were expecting, the NES Classic.
Mm-hmm.
So they were like, okay, we need to do this again. How do we get better licensed games and also still make money?
Right.
And they just sold it for more and added another controller to justify the price. They could do that again with 4 controllers, charge even more money.
Well, I think they would have to, especially because an N64 emulation is harder.
Here's what I think.
It would cost more money to do.
So the NES Classic has 20 games?
Yeah. The SNES is 21. The NES is 30.
Oh, okay. I think the N64 would have 10.
Hold on a second.
Okay.
We interrupt this broadcast.
Yes, birthday boy is here. What?
You have to get another bottle.
You have to get it. She finished it?
Yeah.
All right,
Anyway, Bruce
we'll be right
Patrick
back.
with $2 says, not having GoldenEye equals not having Chrono Trigger. You mean like we didn't have it in the Super Nintendo Classic? That makes sense. Well, I think GoldenEye is a bigger deal. I mean, Chrono Trigger is a big deal to a lot of people. It would be like not having Earthbound. And Mr. Meach with $5. I had a PS1, so I'm not really nostalgic for these games. I think a lot of them aren't that good, to be honest. Now, a Game Boy / Game Boy Color Classic would be rad. I think we're more likely going to get a Game Boy Color Classic. But do you think that PlayStation 1 games are better? Because I think PlayStation 1 and N64, both, I think that whole generation is not that good. There's a lot of good games, but the whole generation's got a lot of problems. Why not 20 like the PlayStation Classic? I think that there's going to be a lot of licensing issues for Nintendo. And they're going to want to make a profit. And also, the PlayStation Classic didn't do very well. Sorry, I meant on the Switch for Mario RPG. I know this is about classic. I don't know what you're talking about.
Hi, sorry.
Hello.
Crying baby needed food, and birthday boy needed to work.
Dad was crying?
Yeah.
What
I missed?
What was it? Oh, I was saying, I think we're gonna get 10 games.
Yeah,
I think we're gonna get
right. Because
way
even
less.
if you look at like the Virtual Console, they N64 always had the least amount of games.
And they're also gonna probably want to optimize them.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a lot of work. And again, the licensing is going to be a problem. People in the chat were saying that PlayStation 1 had 20 games, the PlayStation 1 Classic.
Yes.
But that also failed.
Yeah.
And it had 20 games nobody cared about.
Mm-hmm.
It had like 3 games people actually cared about.
Yeah.